Welcome to Podcasting Power Hour with your host, Jeff Townsend, aka the Indie Podcast Father. I'm your co-host, Greg, from Indie Drop-In Network. Podcasting Power Hour is recorded live every Monday at 9 p.m. Eastern Time on Twitter Spaces. Every week, an experienced panel of podcasters and other experts will tackle your podcasting questions. We will, of course, put links to all of our guests and any relevant information in the show notes. All right, let's get this party started.
Greg, for all of the individuals who missed you last week, can you give us, without being too personal, can you tell us how you're doing? Have you made it? Are you through the other side?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, sure. So I was in the hospital for 7 days. And I got some sort of injury in my leg that I did not know about, and it got very, very infected. And I learned about it first by thinking I had like a very bad case of the flu or ate something bad. And then my leg literally turned bright red and started creeping up my body. So that was off to the ER.
Now you live to tell the tale.
Yeah,
You live to tell the tale.
You can't kill old
That's
Greg.
right. No, they can't. It's still trying though. I'm home. I have to do IV antibiotics 2 times a day, and see visiting nurses and all this other stuff. Like, so if you get a cut or whatever, like the moral of the story is, you bang your leg against something in the garage or an ottoman or something in your house, like immediately disinfect it and clean it and put a Band-Aid on it. Or else you might get flesh-eating bacteria that tries to murder you in your sleep like me.
On the topic of flesh-eating bacteria, before we move on, Jeff, I swear I'll give it back to you. My father-in-law fell off of his sailboat. You were already not feeling sorry for him. Into brackish water and cut his leg on one of the mooring lines. And in brackish water, I guess there is a flesh-eating bacteria that's pretty common in Florida. And he didn't check in on it. He didn't clean it. Like, he took a shower, but he didn't really pay attention to it. And he got, I think, the same thing, Greg. And he almost lost his leg because he didn't realize it as fast as you did.
Yeah, it's serious business, man. It's serious. So,
all right, let's go ahead and get this started.
Let's do it.
I can't do it. Spend any time with Tanner without drinking. I don't know why.
You and my mother and my wife and all the people.
I have a vitamin water. I don't know if that counts.
Did you call it vitamin water?
No, vitamin water. What, you don't have your ears on or what?
I call them vitamins. Anyways, welcome to Podcasting Power Hour. I'm Jeff Townsend. Man, I can't believe July is almost over with here. It's the last Monday of July. Wow. But I am happy to announce my BFF, my bromance, my best friend for life, old Greg is back.
Hello, everybody. I'm Greg, creator of Indie Drop-In Network. I'm sure I'll plug it at the end. I'm not going to waste time now, but I'm glad to be back, and I hope everybody's brought their questions because, as you can tell, I feel a little snarky today.
Ooh, little feisty, huh? That'll wear off here when you fall asleep in your recliner in a few minutes.
Likely.
Fuzz Martin, glad you're back this week. Last week, I assume you were up to your usual city council important duties.
I was getting yelled at about whether or not we should allow UTVs on our village streets. So here we are. And I'm back. I'm Fuzz Martin. I'm Chief Strategy Officer and a partner at Epic Creative, a full-service advertising agency, also a former broadcaster, and produce a few shows, and happy to be here. I am not drinking today because my wife and I made a pact to not drink during the week until summer's over. So I'm drinking a blueberry bubbly, and
Ooh.
I wish it were different. But
I wish I was as strong as you to be able to be in a space without Tanner and not have to drink. So I admire you for that.
Thank you.
Jim Mallard Jim, I'm going to be on your podcast tomorrow night, right?
Sir.
The millions of quackers is that what you call your fans? Quackers?
Yeah, well, it's on the duck pond. I don't know what I call it. I don't actually have a name for the listeners, but yeah. So, and by the way, I'm driving my lawnmower down your street. I don't care what you say.
Oh, okay. All right.
Lawnmowers are fine. Just UTVs, mopeds are fine. whatever. Just no UTVs apparently.
Mm, I can see why. That gets a little bit dangerous. That and golf carts here in Indiana. That seems to be the cool thing. Senior citizens and golf carts. I don't know. Anyways, the most controversial man in podcasting, to say the least. Today he kind of returned to old form podcasting sucks. It's the maddest lad, Tanny Campbell.
Hey guys, I'm Tanner. Depending on who you ask, I know a lot about podcasting or I know absolutely nothing about it and should go hide under a rock. You'll get to decide for yourself by the end of this room, probably.
I'm going to go ahead and say the second one. So, yeah.
Is it crazy that I hope there's some of both in the room?
That's how I survive, man. That's my brand.
Are we turning this into Survivor and we get to be voted off the island after the show?
Sure.
No, because I'm one of those people just quit.
Some fun with this.
All right, let's get to the main event. Our guest this evening is Jared Easley. He is the co-founder of Podcast Movement. Am I right there, Jared?
I've been called a lot of names, and that's one of them.
Well, I appreciate you taking the time to chat with us this evening. This is your first Twitter space, correct?
Yeah, shame on me. I've never done this, but now that I see how fun it is, I wanted to invite a group of you to come swim with me in murky water in Florida, if anybody's up for it.
I'm in.
That's my middle name, swim in murky water in Florida.
There's a weird initiation where you have to cut your hand with a knife and then dive in.
Yes, and I'm just assuming everyone knew that, but if you don't, now you know.
I see Ariel Nissenblatt down there. I've tried to invite her to speaker, but she's probably off in somewhere like Italy or something busy. So we'll go ahead and get going.
Cool.
Jared,
I see a friend of mine. It's Big D. It's Deshaun from St. Louis. He's with us tonight. So give a shout out to Deshaun. What's up, man?
Really? Greg's from East St. Louis.
Yeah. Deshaun is a possible future U.S. senator out of Missouri. He's running for Senate. No joke. A fellow podcaster here that's going to run for Senate in Missouri. So.
Incredible. Yeah. Congratulations. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So in the meantime, you can, if you want to come up and speak, you have anything to ask or you want to talk about podcasting, go ahead and request the speaker. In the meantime, though, we'll get the conversation going. Jared, I'm curious how you created this. How did it all happen? When did this happen?
Well, I'll start out by saying that this whole event and everything was really just an idea, probably not even a good idea at the time, but it was an idea that stemmed from coming to another event that had a lot of blogging and social media and YouTube and various media type of new media, as they dubbed it, content for creators. And so podcasting, the event was called New Media Expo, and it was a little redheaded podcasting was a little redheaded stepchild corner of the conference. And but when I would attend this event, I would meet a lot of people that were interested in podcasting or they were starting one. And Dan Franks, who's the president of Podcast Movement and the guy that I do business with, we were friends, and we had heard a number of people saying they were interested in podcasting, and we kind of thought, hey, why isn't there an event like this that's just for podcasting? Because it seems like there's a lot of people here that are interested in podcasting, but it's just a very tiny segment of the overall event. And we had no right to be creating an event, Jeff. We had no clout, so to speak. We were not influential by any means. We had no email lists. We were just new podcasters ourselves. So the idea of us trying to start what's now become Podcast Movement is really kind of laughable and ridiculous. But that's really, it was just being naive and saying, hey, let's see if we can create something that podcasters would want to go to, because at the time we looked around, we didn't find anything that was like that. So that's kind of the beginning. Now there were some steps that we took after that, if I can get into, if you want to go there. But that's kind of where the idea stemmed from.
So what about you in podcasting?
Okay, good question. I never really got into blogging when that was a big deal several years back, and I don't know. I tried it, and it didn't resonate with me as much, and I didn't feel like I was very good at it, and I wasn't clear on what I wanted to say. But I like the idea of talking, and so podcasting appealed to me. But at the time, I thought it was too expensive, and that I was going to have to buy hundreds of dollars worth of equipment, and um, just expenses that I couldn't justify in the moment, or I thought. And so I really waited about a year, Jeff. I'm ashamed to say I waited about a year before I ever started a podcast. So I didn't start my podcast until 2013. But I wanted to do it a year before that. But I found out about the Audio Technica 2100. Um, now it's the 2100X, but that mic was a USB mic that you just plug into your laptop, and it was very affordable. I don't remember. It might have been like $45 or something, and the quality was reasonable. And so I bought that mic and tried it out, and then I realized, okay, there's no more excuses. It's time to start a podcast. So that's that's really what pushed me over the edge. Was I started a show in 2013 that was interview based, and I made a lot of good connections, made a lot of friends, and that's kind of what got all this craziness started for me,
Jim,
anyway.
go ahead. Your
So,
hand's up, Jim. Go ahead. This isn't school, man. You don't have to raise your hand.
well, Jim,
I was gonna
maybe he's
say,
trying to high five me, and
yeah,
I'm
no,
glad
no,
that
no.
person.
I do have a question. But I gotta unmute my microphone because I'm special like that. You kind of did answer this, but I was wondering what the time frame for all this was, because then you kind of did mention that, but I was just kind of trying to date backwards. And
Yeah.
when did you start your podcast?
So the podcast launched in April of 2013, and then it was later. So it was like January of 2014 when Dan and I attended New Media Expo. That was in Las Vegas, and that particular year, I want to say it was at the Rio, the casino in Las Vegas. So we went to that event. That's where we heard people saying, "Hey, I'm interested in podcasting. Why isn't there a podcasting conference?" And we agreed with that. And then it was Valentine's Day of 2014 when we launched a crowdfunding campaign, a Kickstarter campaign. We had no email list, no substantial influence at all. It was basically let's just go contact a bunch of people who've been guests on our show, or who we know are podcasters. Let's see if they'll want to participate, want to support. And we raised the bare minimum amount of money to kind of put on a very small, what we thought was still a reasonably sized event, and then just kind of learned what we didn't know along the way. So we did that first event in August of 2014.
Did that satisfy your? Did that satisfy you, Jim? Is that
Yep,
what you needed to know, man?
that's all I wanted to know. I was just trying to count backwards on fingers and figure these things out. I figured it was easier just to ask than try to do the math.
I appreciate that.
Hey, Deshaun, go ahead. How are you doing?
Hey, how you doing? Well, my friend, remember this? Hey, piss off! You're fired!
All right, I got to tell that story to Sean, since you're gonna. A lot of people are scratching their head like, "Who's this
I
crazy
knew what
man?"
it meant.
So Deshaun is a wrestling fan, and as he should be. And so we had Eric Bischoff at Podcast Movement in Nashville. He was on a panel, and Eric Bischoff used to run WCW, who used to have the Monday Night Wars with the WWF or WWE. And so Vince McMahon, in a segment a few years after all of that went down, fired Eric Bischoff, and so Deshaun had the opportunity to fire Eric Bischoff at Podcast Movement, and he did that exact thing. He yelled out, "Eric Bischoff, you're fired!" And I'll never forget. It was one of the funniest things that I've seen uh, at any of our events. It made me laugh uncontrollably for several minutes. And everybody that heard it thought it was funny, even if they didn't understand it. They just thought it was so random and crazy. So Deshaun, you will never live that down.
Thank
You for
you.
that moment.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
that was something that I have a lot of great memories from a lot of podcast movements, but that was a moment that I'll never forget. It was uncomfortable and hilarious, and just all the great things.
Yeah, it should have been videotaped. Oh man, that would have went viral. That would have went viral for
it was
podcast movement.
Definitely unexpected, but Deshaun, he seized the day. He took the moment, and even Eric Bischoff laughed, And Eric Bischoff, I'm sure he meets a lot of unusual types of folks being from the wrestling world. And so for him to meet you and for you to fire him publicly in that podcast movement, and he laughed at it, I thought that was pretty cool of him. He was pretty
That
gracious
was a
about
blast. That was a blast.
it. He handled it well. So,
Thank you. Thank you.
yeah, good job, Deshaun.
Thank you.
Deshaun, tell people about your podcast. You have a comedy show, right?
Yes, basically it is comedy generally, but it also variety because I not only do try to do comedy as much as I can, but I read about different things. I just did a podcast earlier today, and also I do NFL predictions, but just for bragging rights. I also do traveling postcards. Like I would do both of the conventions that I love to go to. I'm addicted to them now. I am
Yeah.
so addicted to podcasting conventions. Oh my god! I mean, it's just ridiculous. I love having guests on my podcast. It is so addicted to me. I love letting them speak, and I love having them have a platform on the show. So it's just a labor of love. It's something that I do, even though I may be depressed. I may. If they say that you're supposed to lose different things that you love, but podcasting, oh, I'll still continue to do that.
Well, Deshaun, I know you're not going to say this, but I'm going to let people know because not everyone knows you. Deshaun battles a disability, but he has never let that stop him. He's always kept a good attitude. He's worked really hard with this podcast, and as I mentioned, he is running for Senate in the state of Missouri.
And Lieutenant Governor in 2024, in case that don't work out. So
yeah, Lieutenant Governor is your plan B. So I just
yeah,
want to commend you, Deshaun. I know there's probably some people being like, man, this guy he's a little bit out there, but Deshaun, you're a source of inspiration. I really appreciate all that you
thank
do
you.
and you bring to the podcast community, and just thank you for not letting things that might limit some folks prevent you from putting yourself out there. So good job.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. And guys, thank you for letting this great guest came out. And he's an influencer, y'all. He's a huge leader, y'all. So watch out for Jerry. He's a big leader.
Well, whether I deserve that or not, thank you.
Thank
You're
you,
welcome.
Deshaun. It's nice meeting you.
Nice meeting you.
All right, Jeff. So let's continue.
Yeah,
what's
sure.
going on?
Yeah, sure. So go ahead,
So
Greg.
yeah, so Jared, I got a quick question.
Yeah.
I've always wondered, like I came across podcast movement from the Facebook group, because I'm 97 years old. So that's a lie. That's just because Jeff makes fun of me.
That's all right.
What kind of success do you think the Facebook group contributed to the overall podcast movement? Because that group's pretty active and pretty large.
Yeah, I think the group has really kind of taken on a life of its own, which is in some cases is awesome, and in some cases it's created a lot of I guess challenges from an admin standpoint. So you get some people that are genuinely in there to just help and be gracious, and you have some people who are kind of leveraging it for selfish purposes and self promotion, and then you're having to determine which is which. And
Kind of sounds like
sometimes,
Tanner. It's something Tanner would do.
well, yeah, I mean, we've dealt with a little bit of everything, and I would love to tell you that we've always handled it perfectly. We haven't, but we definitely have some things in place now, and Facebook's created some AI type of moderation that's made it, I would say, a lot easier. It's not made it perfect, but it's certainly made it easier to catch certain things that we probably wouldn't allow.
But do
Depending
you
on
think it's contributed to the attendance in the show considerably, or no?
I don't know. There's a lot of people. If you posted in the Facebook group and be like, "Hey, did you know there's an event in Dallas next month?" You might get a lot of people comment, be like, "Huh? What are you talking about?" Like, there's a lot of people that join the group that really don't even know Podcast Movement has an event. So I think that's mixed. I do think that it's a great discovery place for people that are interested in learning more about podcasting, connecting with other podcasters, and they're going to potentially find out about the conference. But yeah, I'd say maybe a majority or I'd say a good number of people in that group that probably don't even know that we have an event. And we try to do everything we can to make that, painfully obvious, but sometimes that's not uh, it doesn't work that way. So I think the group is great for discovery, for people learning more about podcasting, for people connecting with other podcasters. And I would say a percentage of that group do become aware of podcast movement events and things like that, and they have supported that. But it'd be wonderful if we had 75,000, you know, plus people attend our conference. But that
How many
I'm sure
people
we won't have
typically
that many
attend?
people.
How many people do
Um,
attend usually?
I'd say, right before COVID, we did an event in Orlando. We had 3,000 plus, and then we did an event in Nashville last year, and we had about I want to say a little over 2,000 in person, and then we had maybe almost that online virtually. So it's hard to say. I'd like to think maybe Dallas might pull in 2,500 or so. I don't know. I'm not sure what it's going to end up being. But it should be a reasonable attendance, and I don't know if it'll be pre-COVID as big as pre-COVID. But then people who do events, they've seen this, and they can testify to this. Is sometimes your biggest swell of registrations is literally like the week or two before the event. So while we have a decent number of attendees as of now, we're going to see a swell that's most likely going to pop up here in a little bit, and you could end up with more than you expected or about right where you thought it'd be. So it's hard to say. If I had to guess, I'd say maybe 2,000 to 2,500, maybe in person. That's my guess.
Fair amount. That's pretty good. Jim, go ahead. Then we'll go to Gary. He's at his hand up.
I just want to know how we come to select these cities, because I'm being up in the Northeast, I'm just kind of feeling a little left out.
Well, we do love the Northeast. Let the record reflect that. We have tried to have events in the Northeast. We've had some smaller stuff in Boston and a couple other places, but we haven't had a podcast movement up that way just yet. But we did Philly a few years back. But yeah, right now we've just been kind of making the rounds, and I'll be in Dallas this summer, and then we have Evolution's event that's in March. That's going to be in Las Vegas, and then I don't think it's
Denver, baby.
yeah, Denver is 2023, so that's in Colorado. We've not been to Denver yet. We're excited about that, and then in 2024 we'll be in DC. So not Northeast completely, but closer.
I'll
So
show you. I'll show you around when you get here, Jared. I don't
yeah,
know
great.
if you want to be shown around, but I'll show
You
you
don't
around.
even have a car,
well,
Tanner.
yeah, I'm not the dispensary type, but I'll definitely I definitely do.
What kind of bigoted comment? I don't smoke weed just because I live in Colorado. I smoke weed because I like it.
I'm not implying that. I was saying that just in case Matt Gibson, who's joined us, if he thought that I might be interested in that, but I'm not. So,
hey, Jared's a straight edge. That's all I'm.
I do got to give a shout out to Matt Gibson. Matt is a podcaster. He does the Kingdom of Rock. It started out with he was just interviewing a lot of really amazing rock stars and learning how they make a living in this kind of new age of music. And now Matt is actually a tech entrepreneur. He's starting an app that's going to help people that have PTSD and have anxiety disorder listen to music. You may need to kick in here, Matt, and correct me, but basically figure out what kind of music and what kind of playlists they listen to that really can help them when they're struggling with anxiety. So it's called Neural Tunes. So stay tuned for that. So I'm excited for Matt and kind of the cool things that he's doing and the leadership that he has in the podcast space and in the tech space. Matt, did you want to kind of share a little bit about Neural Tunes real quick?
Well, the first thing I wanted to do is say, if you guys are on the fence about going to podcast movement, it's a life-changing experience, especially if you've never been there before, because to see that many independent broadcasters all in one place, building their audiences, you're going to have these conversations at the bar and at restaurants and events and stuff with all these people. And you're going to learn so much from just being around that many smart people trying to be independent broadcasters. So highly recommended. I'll be there too. So if you see the guy with the big hair walking around in a suit, maybe give me a wave and pull me aside, and we'll have a chat. But yeah, we're building a tech startup, and it came out of my podcast because we'd interviewed over 100 rock stars during COVID, and because we got all these people on the show, we're like, well, why don't we open up a Zoom and just let them network? And because all the musicians were out of work, so we through all of that networking, I mixed it up with some tech people, and we started a tech startup called NeuroTunes, where we listen to your biometrics while you're listening to music, and then we can determine how your music is making you feel, and it's your own music. And so then we know what music's best to help you feel better if you're anxious or depressed, or maybe you need to get a little extra push at the gym or whatever it is, or performance at work. So, but that came from a podcast. So, a podcast community. So you can, and that's the people that I interviewed that came out of. So a podcast doesn't necessarily have to be about building an audience, although I highly recommend that. But at the same time, it can also be just about the people that you get to talk to and ask anything you want. That's why I started the podcast, because I wanted to learn how to make it in the music business. And so I've talked with tons of people in the industry, and I'm working on my music career right now. I moved to Vegas. I'm here doing all kinds of stuff. And Jared has been a great mentor to me, and inspired me to try a whole bunch of things that I wouldn't have tried. So props to you, and thanks for being a cool dude, Jared.
But not the dispensary, right? Just in case Tanner is tempted. So
Nah, straight edge.
Fair enough.
Old straight edge Jared, that's what they call him. Listen, I got a question for Jared. Let's get back on track here.
Yes, yeah. Let's do that.
Here's my question for Jared. Jared,
yes.
Two things. Let's start with the easy one. When Podcast Movement first started, it was baby diapers, dude. It was like you guys must have been in so far over your head, and now it's a fucking behemoth on the circuit, right? You guys are the biggest podcast conference, maybe globally. Is that true?
I believe that's true.
What are give me one of or two of the hardest lessons you've learned over these, it's 10 years almost?
Well, we made a lot of mistakes in the beginning, and we were too kind of new and naive to really process that. I guess we were just so excited to be starting something that had potential that we didn't mind it. But I look back now and think about those first few years. It was 4 years before we ever made any money. We didn't get paid anything, so we had day jobs, and then on top of our day jobs, we worked, like another full-time job, planning and organizing these events. And I look back now and be like, man, how did we survive that? That was really tough. My wife thought I was crazy, and we had enough. I'm sorry if it went out there. We had enough proof of concept at the time to continue on, and so several lessons that I think we learned early on was the second year, I believe it was, we had an event in Fort Worth, and we were all excited and just put countless hours into preparing for it, and delivered what we thought was a really exciting and good event that kind of helped us to start networking with other circles and other niches of podcasts other than just kind of the business niche, which was the first year primarily. And so we had a lot of nice wins there, but when we did the math and figured everything out, we ended up being $40,000 in the hole. So we had worked, tirelessly to try to put on this great event, and then to owed 40 grand, and I'll never forget, that was very deflating. We were hearing from people that had attended Podcast Movement and said, "Oh, because I attended Podcast Movement, I got all these clients, and I made 6 figures, and we owed 40 grand." So we were like, "Oh, this is probably not worth it." Thankfully, what we did learn from that, to get back to your question, Tanner, was we determined what mistakes we made and what guardrails we needed to put in place, and then just decided, okay, we're gonna learn from this. We're not gonna just take the beating and then just give up. So we did insert some guardrails. Some of these things were They were pretty obvious to us now, but they weren't then. So, things like affiliate links, we were paying out a little too much in affiliate links, and people that would sell a ticket to somebody who might have purchased or registered for Podcast Movement anyway. So we're kind of cannibalizing ourselves with some of the affiliate deals. We had way too much money that was spent on trying to bring in certain marquee type of speakers, and we really didn't have the budget for that kind of stuff. And we approved it because we thought we needed it, and we realized moving forward, okay, we got to be a lot more. We just can't do that like we've done it before. So those are two prime examples. There's a lot more, but just and then getting feedback from everybody. Okay, what needs to happen the next year, and every event that we do, we always try to get feedback at the end of the event. And there's so many great ideas that come up that we didn't think of, that other people say, hey, what if you did this? And we try to implement those, and I think the event continues to evolve and hopefully get better as it grows, because of listening to people and making that a priority. And then I'm going to say one last thing, and some people this might resonate with, and some it might not, but it was an important decision that we decided on, and that was in the very beginning. Dan and I determined that we would not try to be the faces of Podcast Movement. We wouldn't put our face all over the banners, and we wouldn't put our face on social media, and we wouldn't be the keynote speakers, and we decided, hey, if we're going to really try to create a community, a podcast community, then we really can't try to be the spotlight. We need to take that spotlight and put it on the attendees and put it on the community, and not put it on ourselves. And um, there's nothing wrong with personal branding. I think personal branding is very important. I think people that do that right and do that well, I think that's a skill, and something that's got a lot of benefit to it. But we kind of took that opposite approach with Podcast Movement, and now I believe that turned out to be a good move, because we really didn't have, like I said, the influence to say, okay, we have the authority to create this behemoth conference, as you said, Tanner. We who are we to create this? We're not really anybody special. We're not anybody that's that important. We just threw a party, so to speak, and invited a bunch of people, and they were gracious enough to come, and then it just kind of picked up, and the timing was right. Yeah, there was a lot of work that went into it, and we have a great team, and we have a lot of really gracious people in the community that supported it. Uh, but that's the truth, is we're not any better than anybody else, and it was the right time, right place, and we just got lucky, and we've really doubled down on quality, and just being careful with how we spent money, and putting it back into the event. And so now I think that those decisions over the last several years have really put us in a position that we're now in. But we couldn't be in that position had we not made those sacrifices early on. So it's not been a just overnight. We just created this event and it was an instant win. I mean, there were some wins along the way, but it certainly didn't come easy. And now we're at a place now where we're just growing, and it has a good reputation. But I think that's because a lot of sacrifice that were made early on, which I look back now and realize, okay, that was good. That was the right thing to do. So.
Well, it's also a good move to not be the face of something, because if you are, it means when you guys decide, okay, it's time for us to maybe move on to the next project or retire, then it doesn't die. Somebody else can take it over. So one more question, and I'll bounce it back to Jeff. And just a heads up, Chair, this isn't meant to be a tough question. It's meant to be, I think people want to know about this, so I'm going to ask.
Go ahead.
It might be tough, but not for that reason. You guys took an absolute drubbing, as most companies who did anything did in 2020. How did you handle that? And what specifically have you changed about Podcast Movement to be more, I don't know, COVID proof or something? I don't mean I don't mean on site. I mean, how do you ensure in today's world with COVID that we don't have another 2020 repeat, that it doesn't get canceled? What are you guys doing differently in that regard?
Well, everybody that's in events struggled with that. That was hard. We handled it probably as good as anybody could. But that said, I think we have we try to discern what the local safety protocols are where we're having the event. then based on that, we do our best to, with assistance from the hotel and with our staff and our volunteers and everything, make sure those are implemented. Um, I thought in Nashville we did a reasonable job where we had buttons that basically gave people an understanding of someone's comfort level. So as like a green button would signify, hey, I'm okay with being in close proximity and talking to someone, and I don't necessarily need a mask. And a yellow was someone that was being more cautious and maybe wanted some more personal space. And a red was, hey, if I've got a mask on, I'd like for you to have a mask on. People, I think for the most part, they were kind about that and considerate. And I don't know that it's necessary in Dallas this summer to quite have that extreme as we did last summer, but it might be. So we'll just kind of pay attention to it and go with it and implement what we need to implement to try to keep us safe. And but yeah, that's difficult for anybody doing events. It's and there is let's just be honest. If you're going out, if you're flying, you're traveling and stuff, you are taking a little bit of risk. So hopefully people are comfortable and they'll be at the event and they'll feel safe and they'll be able to go home and not get sick. And but yeah, that's really, some of that is in our hands and some of it isn't. So we do what we can. So
yeah, and to be fair to Jared, for anybody who didn't attend Podcast Movement in Tennessee, they did a great job. Those buttons I thought were really cool. They provided masks on site. The event didn't feel like there was ever too many people in one place, or it was really spread out because you guys had it at the Grand Ole Opry, which is a huge venue. It was impressive that you could even fill it. I mean, it was amazing. So that's all I've got. How about you, Jeff? What do you got?
I'd like to say two things. First of all, I found that comment interesting, Tanner, about you're agreeing with him not to be the face of the event. That's a weird thing for somebody to say that literally has their face on their podcast cover.
Well, my podcast would die if I died. It's not an event. I also thought of that. I wanted to ping you and tell you to put my cover art up in the nest.
I don't think it's wrong to have your face on your cover art, by the way.
With that face, it is, though.
My face on my T-shirt that I'm wearing right now, and I'm at home.
Well,
I was gonna say, has anybody seen Tanner's face? It might be wrong.
I have seen Tanner's face, and I think that's Tanner has a certain vibe that
Tanner has a face.
Tanner, you got that vibe where that resonates with certain folks, and there's some people, man, they may pass, and shame on them. But
boy, you're telling me,
do your thing.
He doesn't seem like the type of guy that would be good at social distancing. Anyways, we'll move on. Gary, you've had your hand up forever. Thank you for being patient.
Hi, Gary.
Thank you. You ever watch America's Got Talent?
Yeah.
I'm going to be on it next season.
Okay. What do you do?
My talent is Yogi Bear, Boo Boo, Tweety Bird, and other voices. I do more.
So you do like cartoon voices, basically?
Like, hey, what are you thinking there, people? Nothing there much there, Yogi. You're going to get me in trouble, Yogi.
Is that really you, or is that you hit play on an app there? That sounded pretty good.
Give us some more, then we will go to the next speaker. We'll give you just another two.
Yeah, maybe Jeff, you should give him a sentence to read. Yeah.
Hey, what are you thinking there, people? You're gonna get me in trouble, Yogi. What do you think about Amber Heard there, Yogi? She's pretty cool there, people. That shows that I'm doing it.
Gary, I hope you get that golden buzzer, man. I really do.
Yeah, me too.
I don't know that you will, but I hope you get it.
Showered in golden confetti, I can already picture it. It's gonna be magical.
Ooh, Granny, come quick. I thought I saw a putty tit, Granny. Ooh, I did see a putty tit, Granny.
Well,
magnificent.
That's very amazing. Well done.
Yeah. Thank you, Gary, for stopping by.
You're welcome. Don't forget to watch me on next season.
I will. I'll be looking for it. So
definitely will.
They're going to put it on. They're going to put it on YouTube, and then after it's put on YouTube, then it'll be aired on TV on NBC.
This is why Jeff didn't give me hosting ability.
I think there's people who are listening to this and be like, "Hey, I'd like to have Gary maybe do a little promo for my podcast." So maybe Gary gets some love from the group here from those impressions.
Oh, magnificent! Yeah, that's magnificent, Jared. We should just I'm going to do that right now. I need a voiceover
You need
for
a
an
voice
episode.
for the podcasting power hour. Gary could hook you up.
Exactly.
Yep.
Amazing plug there.
There you go.
Podcasting Power Hour is part of Indie Drop-In Network. If you are a podcaster looking to grow your listeners, check out IndieDropIn.com. Indie Drop-In is always free, and we have opportunities right now for comedy, true crime, scary, and paranormal podcasts. Just go to IndieDropIn.com to learn more.
All right, Greg, do you have any questions, man? I know you're recovering.
I'm not opening the wallet for that. Sorry, Jeff.
Yeah,
I'm not even sure what that means, Jeff.
Greg's my money guy.
He's talking about his prison wallet. We probably don't want to know any more
Chris
than that.
Wallet, yeah.
I'm not unvelcroing my wallet to give you money for a Tweety Bird Power Hour voiceover. I'm sorry.
Well,
That's just
Gary,
over the edge.
How do we know that Gary's not a very generous person and maybe he wants to, just put it out there to promote himself? You know?
Oh yeah. So then we see him at Podcast Movement.
Am I
and he
about to be the
reminds me-
voice of reason? Is that going to happen?
He reminds me that I owe him a favor. We'll see how that goes.
Okay. Well, yeah, you're right.
Do I need my bell? Do I need my bell, guys? Can we get on with this?
Proceed. Yeah, let's move on.
Greg, I challenge you to ask a question. I guess we'll go to Fuzz.
Yeah, I just so we run a lot of trade shows and such for clients, and when March 2020 hit, we really had to adjust our business model as an agency because we obviously everything changed. So thankfully we also have a full video team in house, so we were able to adjust and help people virtually. But I just wanted to say kudos to you for being able to keep things rolling through all of that, because it was difficult all around. And don't really have a question, but just wanted to say great work.
You know, another thing that popped up, Fuzz, from the COVID experience on our side was a realization that, hey, we shouldn't have all the eggs in just the event basket. We should have other streams of revenue, and that was a good thing because we put some more focus into things like podcast newsletters and professional services, some other ways to create revenue streams that we didn't have prior. And so I think even though COVID was very difficult and it was an eye opener, I'm really thankful to say it helped us kind of come up with some new things for the company overall. And then I'm proud also that we never had to lay anyone off. We were able to keep our team and pay them. And yeah, that wasn't fun some months, but we did that. And, now everybody's been able to stick with us, and we didn't lose anybody. So I'm thankful for that.
How big is the team?
We have about 7 full-time employees, and then we got, multiple contractors. So all our full-time employees stayed on, and then, our contractors, they were still able to work with us in the various capacities, that, depending on what they do. But yeah, we were still able to keep people around and not have to lay anyone off or take a pause or anything like that. And that was, a little bit tight there at times, and that required some sacrifice too. I took a pay cut, and some of that hasn't come back to me yet, and maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. But it's just a way to keep the team, together, and I don't have any regrets. It was a good thing. So
Definitely don't start a business with Tanner then if you're looking to get that money back. Eduardo, you have a question, Ed?
yeah.
Sorry, I'm walking my dogs as we're doing this. Yeah, we were supposed to hear a pitch from a guy about 4 weeks ago. Did we ever get it? Because I've been in the room every week. Never heard this guy's pitch. He wanted us to help him, and then he never shows up and does it. Did I miss it?
No. You're talking about Dave and his new business podcast. No, he's not even in here.
Well, shame on him.
We will look for him next time. We'll hunt him down for next week, Ed.
I worked with him on getting that pitch tight as well. He did a pretty good job, and he was DMing me, and we got some stuff figured out for him. And I was hoping he'd come here and show and tell, and thought maybe he did it while I was at a board meeting. But yeah, he's ghosted us. He got all the work for free.
All that jelly and no toast.
Well, I'm not going to comment on that, but I do want to give a quick shout out to someone who's in the audience. My second favorite Denver resident, which of course Tanner has to be number one, right? So Michelle Jackson, who's here, and Michelle is just somebody that I really appreciate, and she's actually put together some really cool stuff for podcasters, helping them figure out unique ways to monetize. And she's kind of reaching toward the person that's not getting all the downloads and not crushing it, as they say. They're still trying to work through it. And so I don't know if we can put Michelle on the speaker list here, but I'd love to hear from Michelle. Michelle, give us a little bit of an update on what you're working on. And for anyone who's not familiar with you, I'd love for you to be able to do a quick intro.
Yeah, we met Michelle last week, actually, and she's already my favorite person from
Yeah,
Denver.
Michelle's amazing. Are we able to make
cunt.
How do we make her a speaker? I'm not sure.
I sent her a request. There she is.
She's being humble. Okay. Oh, there she is. Okay. Hey, Michelle.
I'm just slow to do that. Thank you, Jared. I was so excited to see you in the room. I just got off my own space. So my name is Michelle Jackson. I run a couple different podcasts, but my main one is called Michelle's Money Hungry. I talk about personal finance, but the project that Jared is talking about is called Podcasters Getting Paid. And the project is specifically geared towards podcasts with 10,000 or fewer downloads per month, and just the ways you can monetize those projects. It is not trying to get people to monetize who don't want to monetize. It's for people who have identified that they want to monetize their projects, but they're really not sure what that looks like for either their fiction or nonfiction pursuits. Excuse me.
Podcasts that have fewer than 10,000 listens
Yes.
a month. So that's all of them.
Well,
there's one or two. Yeah.
The thing is, like, when you go to a lot of sessions at conferences, typically industry professionals will always be like, well, we won't work with you until you get 10,000 downloads. And
Advertise cast.
you know what I mean? Like, they will. And for me, I got frustrated because I'm like, well, I'm getting paid. And it doesn't make sense that people keep hearing this messaging when I knew that there were other ways you could do a thing. You could get paid more than one way, right? And so that's why I launched this very accessible product and project. And it's something I've been talking about for, like, I want to say 4 years I've been talking about this. And finally, I just decided to create a tool around it.
Well, I'm so glad that you did. And yeah, Michelle is an author. She does a lot of really cool stuff. So definitely somebody to keep on the radar. I'm a big fan. So
Thanks,
go, Michelle. Yep.
Me too. You're also my favorite Jackson now over Dave. So congratulations.
I'm only
wow.
No, seriously though, that sounds awesome what you're doing, and it was good to see you again, hear you again. You know what I mean. All right, I'm going to ask a question, but I'm going to let the greatest song, no, blah blah blah. You know where you are.
Every
man. Come on up.
fucking week, you cannot say this.
I can't ever say that. I don't know why the fuck I can't.
Should I start logging in under my personal account because it's so much easier to say?
Ed
yes
takes it. He shows up here every week for you, and you can't get his show name right once.
He's a super follower too. That shows you how bad I am.
Unsuper followed. What's up, Jeff? What's up, everybody? I just came in to say thank you to Tanner, who, you know, some people say is not helpful, because I'm going to launch my first billboard in a karaoke city. And I wouldn't have thought of that if it hadn't been for Mr. Tanner Campbell.
Well, you need to thank Jim. You need to thank Jim Mallard.
Yeah, Jim inspired me. I wouldn't have been able to give you that advice if I didn't get the advice from Jim.
Well, thanks, Jim. Thanks. I guess you're my grandpa in this advice. You're the grandpa advice, and Tanner's the father of the advice, and Jeff was the podcast father, but now he's just the guy who always messes up my name. So.
Yeah, I was gonna say you're welcome for the advice, and Jeff. Well, maybe he'll get this greatest song ever sung poorly correct sometime. I mean, it's not that hard. I mean,
It
I
Jim
didn't
would be a
Jim
write it.
got it
power
on the
hour
first
though, Jeff.
try, Jeff. First try, Jeff. Jim got it.
The greatest guest ever introed poorly.
There you go. I like that. It wouldn't be a
Yeah.
power hour if I could say it right though. You know what I mean? So, Jared, I have a question for you. There's a lot of people. I've had a lot of my followers DM me or talk to me and ask about what podcast movement is. Obviously, we've kind of touched upon that, but to you, why is it beneficial to attend? Let's say if you're somebody just getting into podcasting, and it's, I guess the term I drive to the moon, an indie podcaster, like a new indie podcaster. What's your selling point, and what are the benefits of attending?
Well, whether it's podcast movement or it's things like podcasting power hour or it's things like Michelle's course, helping you to monetize. I think immerse yourself where you can, when you can, into the podcast movement or into the podcast community as a whole, because there. I think it's fair to say, not just in podcast movement, but just in podcasting in general, that most people are very generous. Most people are collaborative. Most people are synergistic in their mindset, and you don't always see that in other niches and other places. So people that you might not have anything in common with outside of podcasting, you start talking about podcasts, and then you can create a friendship from that, and a bond and a connection, maybe even a business partnership or some kind of collaborative idea. But we've seen that time and time again. So podcast movement, I think, is just a party. It's just a place for podcasters that want to come together. And I think podcast movement's unique, and this is kind of tooting our horn, I guess, but it's not intended to be vanity driven or anything like that. But there's um, people that are at podcast movement that you might not get access to um, just any other way. So uh, a lot of the big podcast industry folks are in the room and in the hallways, and those are the people that are involved in iHeart or Apple or Spotify or some of these others, Pandora. I could name, Sirius XM, all these different, entities that are out there. And there's a number of these groups that are actually willing to talk to you and willing to get to know you. And if they get to know you and they like what you're doing, they might promote you. And there's opportunities where there's spotlights and different things where you can potentially get your podcast exposed. And if they know who you are and they like you and you've created a rapport with these folks, you could be one of those folks that gets mentioned in this blast that they put out from time to time. So it's pretty awesome to have those opportunities. We've seen that happen time and time again, where somebody came to the event, they got to know someone from Apple or from Spotify or something, and the next thing you know, they were featured in this thing, and it was really just because they got on the radar and they were not annoying or me, but just trying to get to know people and network and do it the right way. And so that's one of the reasons podcast movement I think is really great is several years back there was less synergy, there was less learning across the various niches of podcasting, and we're starting to see that a lot more. You'll see the various categories of podcasts learn from each other, and that wasn't the case back in 2013. And so I don't want to say podcast movement is the only reason for that, but I definitely think we've played a part in that. And now you see more people who are learning and saying, okay, I see what these folks are doing over here, and it's working for them. Let me try that in the niche that I'm in. Uh, Funny example I've shared before, but I love this story, is a woman who's into bird watching, and she has a popular podcast in that niche. She came to podcast movement. Her name is Marty, and she speaks at universities about birds, and she's pretty well respected in that field. I asked her, I was like, what session did you go to that you thought was helpful? And the answer made me laugh because it was not one I expected. She said, oh, I went to the wrestlers. The guys were talking about how they engage with their audience and how they do their Patreon, how they do live podcasting events, and all these different things that I can go back and I can apply to the bird watching podcast. And it made me laugh because I thought, well, what other place is there where the bird watcher is learning from the wrestling fan or whatever? So random, but I love that example. But I think that's a pretty good example of the people that you might not think you could learn from, you can actually learn a lot from. There's a lot of really smart people at Podcast Movement. Most of them are pretty gracious. So if nothing else, you'll network, and you will likely come away very encouraged, very excited about what you're doing, what your idea is, and probably you've had several conversations with people that give you suggestions on how you could maybe make that idea better. Sounds like a lot of that happens here in the Podcasting Power Hour, where people all of a sudden put up billboards and see win. So that's the kind of conversations that happen at Podcast Movement too. Just people are trying to help one another, and then you hear stories, the following year or the year after that, where somebody tried something that they heard and got an idea from, and then they've seen some progress, and they're continuing to grow and continue to learn. So I think those are good reasons to consider being a part of Podcast Movement. Come to the event.
Jared, what is the difference between Podcast Movement, the main event, and Podcast Movement Evolutions? This is somewhat of a new thing, right? This will be your third one coming up, Evolutions?
Yeah, that's a good question. So the second event is primarily focused on the West Coast. We were doing a lot of kind of Central and East Coast stuff, but not as much West Coast. We'd done one Podcast Movement in Anaheim a few years back. And so we wanted something that was more on the West Coast. And then we found that we had more people that were industry focused that were coming to Evolution, so that a piece of that event is really focused for folks in the industry specifically. But there's a lot of people that are regular podcasters that would come to Podcast Movie that would also want to come to Evolution. So that's how we determined, okay, we have the tracks are completely different from Podcast Movement. So at Evolutions, you have a beginner podcaster track where all of the sessions would be appropriate for someone who's at a beginning level. You have a pro podcaster track that all those sessions are relevant to the person that's been doing it as a professional. And then you have an industry track that all of those sessions are going to be industry specific. So that's really what Evolutions is, where Podcast Movement in Dallas is going to be kind of a choose your own adventure. You've got a marketing track, you've got a monetization track, you've got a creation track, you've got, all these different tracks that are on these different topics and pain points that podcasters deal with. And so you can say, well, I want to go to this particular session, but I don't want to be married to just the marketing track. I want to go over here to the creation track, or I want to go, learn about this other thing. So there's a number of different sessions and different topics that you can go to at Podcast Movement. Where Evolutions, you just kind of say, okay, this is kind of where I'm at in the podcast space, and so I'm going to buy a ticket based on kind of where I'm at, and learn from the sessions that are kind of focused on, that particular role, if that makes sense. So.
Tanner, are you silent for the first time ever?
No, I figured you were going to take it after that. I've got more questions if you want to slack off.
He was taking a sip.
Yeah, exactly. No, you can go ahead and ask another one here. I think we have just a few more minutes, but we'll
Sure.
go over a little bit. If that's okay with Jared.
Yeah, of course.
So Podcast Movement is, I think the first thing everybody sees when they go to get a ticket, especially if they've waited to the last minute, as you say many people do, is they think, oh man, okay, this is gonna be a few $100. Like I paid $500 for my ticket, 500 something for some others that I bought for people who couldn't afford to go. And some of those people that I bought tickets for said, you know what, thanks for the ticket, but it's not just that, it's also the hotel accommodations and the airfare. So we're talking about what are the benefits of going to this. At what stage in a podcaster's podcasting age, podcasting maturity, do you think is like the perfect time for a podcaster to attend? Or do you think there isn't one? Do you think it doesn't matter? Because I feel like somebody who's brand new out of the gate, it's a big investment for somebody who's brand new out of the gate.
Yeah,
so are we looking for somebody who's in like year 2, year 1?
I don't think so, Tanner. I think that's a completely fair question, and I personally don't think that it should matter if times are hard and you're kind of needing to focus your finances on other things. Then you should absolutely be doing that. You shouldn't be taking a trip to Dallas to come to a conference, and that's okay. But there are virtual tickets if somebody says, I really do want to learn this, and the travel is just too much. We do our best to create options, and there's some people that are overseas and things. It's just too expensive to fly to Texas, and so we have the virtual ticket, And so we try to create win-wins, but we realize, at the end of the day, we're a business. We have to keep the lights on. We have to pay our staff. We have to do certain things. So we have to charge money, and that's okay. But there are some people that, they're not in a position to commit to this right now, and that's okay too. But for those that are, I would say even if you're not a podcaster yet, you'll come and you'll get really good ideas on what you think you want to pursue, and maybe some smarter ways to pursue that. Whether it's what kind of mics you should be using, or what kind of marketing you should consider for your show, or what kind of framework, things like that. So I definitely agree with you, Tanner. It's a commitment, and if you can make the commitment, I think it's worth. It's a worthy commitment, but if it's not something you can swing right now, you shouldn't beat yourself up. You should definitely take your time, and if you can come, and if you can't, we try to make win-wins. We give out scholarships. There's some people that have hit us up and said, hey, I can afford this for a ticket, and is it an option for me to be able to make it? And we talk to the team and see, okay, is there a way to figure out a discount or something? So we try to come up with ways to help people. We really don't want the money to be the ultimate end all be all, but we realize that's, you can't always win on that side. So you just do the best you can, but we try. And yeah, for people that aren't able to commit and go to an event right now, that's okay. That's why you have a lot of wonderful free options like the Facebook group, which there's no charge there. You can go in the group, you can ask questions all day, you can network, you can learn a lot just from doing that. So there's tons of wonderful content like Tanner puts out, and things like this podcasting power hour, where even if you never attend an event, you can still network, you can still get good ideas, and you should do those things. So I think podcast movement is great, obviously, because it's a business and it's something I'm a part of. But for the podcaster in general, I say depending on your situation financially, if you can go to events, do it, and if you can't, don't feel bad. There's lots of really great resources out there, and just tap into those and keep pursuing what you feel compelled to pursue.
Cool. Well, with that, let's do kind of like can we do a round robin, Jeff? Because
Michelle has her hand up.
oh shoot, I'm sorry,
Yeah,
Michelle. I'm not looking at my phone.
She didn't get to plug her URL link.
That's why
No,
Tanner's
no.
not the
I want to
host.
talk about the accessibility of podcast movement and cost. I think that there are a couple of things that people, if they're really passionate about it and they want to go, the first run for tickets. Most conferences have really affordable tickets, that are sold typically, and I'm not speaking for Jared, but this has been my experience, right after the last conference ends. There are scholarships. I have, for other events, I've received scholarships to attend where maybe other attendees are providing them. There are oftentimes, and I don't know about podcast movement, this has happened occasionally, there might be opportunities to volunteer. So I think that there's more than one way to do a thing. And that if someone's really excited to go, like it's August, next week is August 2022. If you want to go next year, maybe you're like, okay, I'm going to side hustle once a month, and that's the money I allocate towards that. Nothing too stressful, because life is stressful enough. And then that little once a week, a month, once a weekend, you put that money aside, and then you're ready for next year. And if there are scholarships and things like that, you apply for it, boom, you're ready to go. I'm just saying.
I mean, as somebody who has told people that they should drive for Uber on Sundays so they can afford a marketing budget for their podcast, I'm in complete agreement with you there. Like, if you want to do it, make it happen for yourself. Totally. Am I the only person up here who has been to podcast movement, other than Jared, of course?
I've been to all of them.
Yeah,
okay.
Michelle, I know Matt's been. There's a few people I recognize. We got Tom in the room. Been gracious.
Jim, Fuzz, Jeff.
He's actually got on the stage once or twice. Tom.
I have not.
You know the answer to that, Tanner.
Okay. Well, I thought it would be nice because there are probably people in the audience who might be on the fence about whether or not they want to make this investment. They want to make the trip. They think it's worth it. If we could take a minute to say something that was valuable in our first experience at Podcast Movement. I don't want to lead that off. There are other people who've been to more of them than I have. Maybe Matt could be a good starter there. Matt, are you willing?
Matt Gibson. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like I said before earlier in the podcast, it's the networking is off the hook. I mean, you are going to make friends for life. I've got people like emailing me, "Hey, are you coming?" Like it's really as far as like a support network, like, "Hey, you're going to make it," that type of thing. You really, I cannot use words to describe the value of that. As far as the seminars, it really depends on why you're doing a podcast. A lot of the seminars are towards different segments in the podcast industry, different stages of the podcaster. And like, are you a new podcaster? Are you trying to make money? You need to get better guests, things like that. There's lots of value there, like if you don't know how to do something. And I would encourage you, if you go to the seminars, go talk to the speakers afterwards and introduce yourself. And you may find a friend for life there. Like there's a lot of great mentorship, networking, and value there. So, and the parties are awesome. Last year, it was Paris Hilton DJing, and well, at Evolutions, and Will Ferrell was the keynote. That was a lot of. I actually had him walk right by me, but Jared had to stop and take a picture, so I didn't get to. So
Damn you, Jared.
I'm just kidding, Jared. But yeah, it was a great experience. I've been to about 4 of them, and I have tons of friends from it.
How about you, Michelle? What would you say?
I love both events. I think if you're looking for someone's to really geek out about your creative work, to talk about podcasting where they actually understand what your questions are, to create community, to find folks who may potentially be in a mastermind group with you, I strongly, strongly encourage you to go. I absolutely loved Podcast Movement Evolutions, by the way. I spoke at the one in LA. I really loved that event. If you're a little further into your journey, in my opinion, I think the Evolutions is a really good fit. There were a lot of industry professionals there. So, but I'll never forget coming out of uh, COVID, coming out, quote unquote, like, because it's still here with us. It's like never going away. Anyway, and going to Nashville and being a little like freaked out slightly and having an amazing time, just with that experience. I'd attended before, but it was a little scary to go, and it was just a wonderful experience. So what I would say is, I think you can get a lot out of it, but it also depends on what you put into it. So if you go and you're skittish and you don't talk to anyone and you're nervous about everything, it's just not going to work. If you go and you have a plan and you have a goal for your experience, I think you will more than exceed your expectations in terms of getting a return. But don't just kind of go, like, have a plan so that you can actually get the results and have the experience that you're hoping for.
Thanks, Michelle. I know we're going over here, Jeff, so I'll be quick if that's even possible. I've only been to one. I've only been to the one in Tennessee, which I loved, and there were 2 things about it that I loved in particular. The first was that podcast movement in general, and I don't just mean Jared and his team. I mean everybody attending puts a lot of effort into create meetups, and some of those are these big meetups that are organized in part by the organizers of the event, in part by speakers, but really just me, somebody who just went there for the first time ever going to one. I created a meetup and had like 12 people come. You can just create meetups with people that you know are going to be there, and you can invite them off site, or if the site's big enough, you can keep it there on site in the hotel, for example. I thought that was really cool. I made a lot of friends at the first and only podcast movement I've been at, so it was valuable to me in that regard. And the second, I can get kind of uppity about things. I think most of the people in the room have experienced that. One of the things I can get the most uppity about is audio engineering. In regards to podcasting, is the thing I feel I am more than anything else, more than a talent of a podcast, a host, a marketer. I think I'm an audio engineer the most. And I was very surprised, and only because I'd never been to one before, that when I went to the podcast movement in Tennessee, that the Dolby Atmos people were there, and that they had a lot of really talented audio engineers who were mixing in Atmos there to teach some of the basic concepts of Atmos, which was really an unexpected surprise for me because I had just started to build my studio out to being Atmos compatible. I was just researching on how to do that. And I was blown away to find something that was so high level at Podcast Movement, because Podcast Movement, going into it, I thought, okay, this is networking and there's a benefit there. But, most of the talks are going to be like basic talks for beginners. And I was wrong about that. And I was pleasantly surprised to be wrong about that. So those are the things that I got out of it.
Tanner, are you aware that your ticket has been revoked for this year? You are not allowed to attend.
He's going to have to revoke about 8 tickets because I think I spent $4,000 on tickets for other people.
He didn't offer to buy me a ticket either, bastard.
As Michelle said, Jeff, you can Uber, and we'd love to see you. But no, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, if you ever have a speaker spot open to talk about how to make Tanner Campbell mad, I'm your guy.
I would be curious to see the turnout for that.
He really is. We could put a ring in the middle of the event, sure.
Hey Tanner, I did have one quick pro tip that I was thinking of when Michelle was speaking. If you see somebody with the Podcast Movement badge on, that's open game to walk up to them and ask them anything nosy about their podcast that you want to. So don't be afraid to do that. Just be bold about it. That's a pro tip for Podcast Movement.
Jeff, is there a way you can allow Tom to be a speaker? I'd love to hear Tom's quick, minute and a half opinion.
If he's yeah, for sure. I just sent him an invite. Tom is always welcome to speak in this space.
Because Tom might have an insight that hasn't been shared.
Tom might have an insight that we shared privately via DM earlier. I'm not sure if he does, though, but we'll invite him up.
I sent him the invite. We'll give it a second here.
But yeah, that's okay.
He's played a pretty critical part in the movement, though, right? I mean, we all wait to see the data.
Yeah, he's given some outstanding presentations on podcast data that's been really helpful. Okay, I don't want to.
He may have fell asleep.
No problem. We can move on. It's fine.
Henry, you have anything else to ask, or anybody else have one more question?
Not I, man. I'm good. This has been great.
We'll do a quick closing thoughts. I'm going to go ahead and let you, Jared, tell people where to go to get these tickets. Find information. I'm going to go ahead and guess the URL, but I'll let you pitch it because you're going to be much better than I am at it.
Well, you can go to 2022.podcastmovement.com. That's the event that we've been referring to. And podcastmovement.com, if you can't remember that, that will have a link to it. And if you can come, we'd love to see you there. It's definitely going to be a great experience. So we're going to do our best to make it a great experience. And I think the overall community is just amazing. And I'm so grateful for opportunities like this, Jeff. You didn't have to invite me on here, but you were kind enough to do that. And this is my first experience with Twitter Spaces, believe it or not. And I've had just an exciting time, and I'm honored to be surrounded by so many of you. And this is a very good group. And I think, if nothing else, if you keep attending sessions like this Podcasting Power Hour, you're going to learn, you're going to get some ideas. And there's just some good people that are knowledgeable in this group that you can ask questions to. And so if you do nothing else, just keep coming back here. And that's my final thought.
Beautiful. Mayor McFuzz, what you got?
I just want to say, thanks, Jared, for coming on and speaking today. And thanks to everybody who shared their thoughts here on the Podcasting Power Hour. I did want to give one parting thought from a couple weeks ago. I am taking Greg's advice, and I am going to be putting my show on a 1-month break, and told my listeners today. So we'll report back on how that bounces back in about 4 weeks. But anyway, Jeff, again, thanks for hosting this as usual, and proud to be a part of it.
I'm proud to have you as a friend, Fuzz. I really am. Jim
Same,
Mallard, do
man.
you want to go ahead and plug your show? Because I'm going to be on there tomorrow night. It's going to be crazy. It's going to be out of control. It's going to be insane.
Yeah, it'll just be like this, but with less people talking. Mallard.com/live, 9 p.m. Eastern tomorrow night. Or just follow me on Twitter and you'll see all the promotion. So there you go. And Ian, thanks, Sheriff, for talking about podcast movie. I've kind of seen it going around, but I kind of had a clue, but I did learn a few things tonight. So pretty cool.
He saw the Twitter account.
I see every Twitter account. That's why Elon Musk didn't buy Twitter, but that's a whole other can of worms.
All right, influencer Tanner, what you got for your closing
Jesus
thoughts?
Christ.
I know you're not typically allowed at these conferences, and if you are, you're probably in handcuffed, to say the least.
Yeah,
Go
sure. Under a nom de plume or something, right? I've got nothing. I mean, I did a little tweet thread today about some places where if you're interested in paying to advertise for your podcast inside some podcast player apps, there's a thread. It's not pinned to my profile, but it should be pretty easy to find. A lot of people seem to enjoy some of the information there. There's also an article on my Substack, which kind of outlines a way for you to create a daily show, a conversation that I had very recently on my podcast with Gary, who's in the audience, talking about creating daily shows and creating essentially more surface area for paid advertisements and how you can make some pretty decent money doing that, and you can control the production cost and time. So I would encourage you to read that article, check out that tweet thread, and if you want to hear the interview with Gary, you can check out, I want to say it was maybe Monday or Friday's episode of Good Morning Podcasters.
It was, what, Fridays? Because today's Monday.
Oh, yeah. Well, all I do is podcast. I live in a booth. I don't know what fucking day it is.
Fair enough. Yeah, no, Jared, thanks for coming by. I think the great thing about podcasting, and I always say this, and beating a dead horse here, I'll say it again. This industry is truly unique where you can just talk to most people in it in all different positions or different skill levels or different roles that they play in the industry. So I think that's just this is another example of that, and not only podcast movement with this Twitter space. So thank you for taking the time to spend this hour with us.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you, Jeff.
No problem at all. And like, if anybody wants to catch up on some of these past ones, there's actually a website up now in podcast form, podcastingpowerhour.com. And until next week, keep being you, keep being great, and don't litter.
Thank you for listening to the Podcasting Power Hour. Everyone is free to participate on Twitter Spaces every Monday at 9 p.m. Eastern Time. To join, just follow Jeff at podcast_father or Greg at Indie Dropin. If you found this podcast helpful, go into your podcast app and write a quick review. Other podcasters will see it and know this show is worth listening to. Also, I'll put a few links in the show notes for ways you can support the show. I think by now you know we love our coffee. Have a great week.
Tanner sucks.
Oh my God. Oh, I love you, Jeff.
It's a fun time.
Tanner doesn't suck. Tanner blows.
I mean, I do both for enough money, I guess. I don't know.
Hey, nice to meet you guys.
Yeah,
you
nice
too,
to
Matt.
meet you, Matt. And thanks for coming, Michelle, and everybody else listening.
So you ready
Chris,
for Tanner? You're gonna have to shoot me some message to put Jeff on the hot seat tomorrow. I've got a few questions, but if there's anything in particular you want on the record, let me know.
Oh,
You'll
yeah.
have to buy him a taco.
You got to buy me a taco. I think my audience maybe doesn't believe that that's what I use that money for, but it is 100% what I use that money for.
I just love when your audience thanks me for introducing them to you, then they buy you a coffee.
Yeah, it's because I'm an asshole. People buy assholes coffees. You're a nice guy.
Nice guys finish last.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey guys, I actually sorry. I'm gonna dip. I gotta make dinner for the wifey. Bye.
Oh, go for it. Have a good night, man.
That's great.
Speaking of, when are we going to get the special hosted episode of Indie Podcaster?
So this is my plan right now. Along with Fuzz, I'm going to start doing seasons, right? Because I want to work on another project I've got going on.
Oh God.
Yep. It's going to be awesome. And so I'm going to start with seasons, but I'm going to release 6 more episodes, and that'll put me at like 70, and then take a month off and start I don't know how many episodes I'm going to do. Maybe 15 a season or something, and try to have it more of a topic related, maybe, I guess. But to answer your question, Ed, I think it will probably be
November.
maybe the last one of those 6.
Okay, so what? November, December, 23.
No, August.
2024.
August.
2024.
It is an Olympic-sized podcast. I can tell you that much.
Well, see,
I
that's
mean, 70 episodes almost in a year is pretty good.
Not
yeah.
bad. I think I have 82 in 3 years, so I'm not complaining.
Most I've ever done is 52. Of course, I do a weekly show, so you figure out that.
Yeah. I can do the math.
That'll
But
cheat
no,
on me.
so Jim, well, how early do I need to jump in there? And where
You
do
can.
are you going to send me something or?
Well, we can figure that out. I could send you a Google Link meet, or I can call you on the phone, or however you want to do that.
Yeah, it doesn't matter with me. I can do Google. That's fine. I'll even get the mic out for that.
Whatever you want to do, I don't care. However you're more comfortable. That's what I always tell my guests, man.
Do I have to wear clothes?
No, because it's audio only, so you're good.
Good. I will wear socks only then.
Well, that's it's audio only, so you're not costing me any listeners, so that's all good.
All right. Well, I'm gonna close this baby out and fold some laundry. Wish me
Oh,
luck.
good luck making those socks. Hopefully, they're all still there.
See you, everyone.